we are unusually, not unlike the events that are happening in real life in the Balkans that always start with at least 15 minutes delay. We're starting the webinars on time, which is a great surprise. So
one of the Corona wins. One of the Corona wins that we're not giving back after this is all over.
Yeah, we should all be respectful and start every session on time. Max, I'm super happy that you're joining us for this webinar. Not sure if we should mute somebody from the chat because I hear background voices coming in.
Let's mute it. There we go. I'm unmuted now.
Perfect.
Very good.
So, first of all, let me say welcome to everybody that's joining us. I see 64 people that are dedicating at least 1 hour to spend it with us so we can cover a really interesting topic and have a really honest chat with Max over here. Thank you to Brainstar for hosting this webinar, and we do hope that after this 1 hour we will bring at least some kind of value to everybody that is afterwards. We can start with brief introductions. Max Gurvits is one of the superstars in the startup ecosystem, not just in the region, but internationally. So people who are following us now on this webinar, 99% of the chances they have met you at some occasion. But if not, let's start with you, Max. First of all, you can introduce yourself briefly and introduce yourself to the people who haven't met you yet.
Sure, absolutely, Nina. It's my pleasure. Well, my name is Max. I've been quite active in the Balkans, Southeastern Europe startup scene over the last well, almost a decade, which sounds frighteningly. I actually moved to Bulgaria in 2011. I grew up in the United States, Russia, Netherlands. Before moving to Bulgaria, I had a company in Holland, which was a startup, very much classical startup. We started before it was cool to do startups. Me and a couple of friends from the law school, the law university. After graduation, we had a few jobs, and then we decided to come together and build an online platform for legal services. Nowadays, looking back at that experience, I see all the crazy risks and crazy mistakes that we made, but it's something that actually worked quite well. It was a very classical startup story. Two people that were friends from university got together. We raised some money. We built something. We went literally door to door in Amsterdam selling it. And then after about a year, 2 years actually, it became a success. One of the really cool things to talk about for me today is that we back then started this company very much in the wake of the crisis. So we started in 2008, a few months before the subprime crisis started in Europe and the US. And then our company really took off as the consequences of that crisis fully materialized in 2009. Fast forward to 2011, that company got acquired very unexpectedly for pretty okay money. And I basically had already this plan to do things in Bulgaria, but then it all kind of accelerated. So I just went to Bulgaria with this, with this idea to start a new startup. I had a few ideas and a few people that I was working with, but then as I started spending more time in Sofia and kind of relocated here, I basically, connected with many people locally that were getting ready to launch the first venture capital funds, because back then Bulgaria and the European Union were actually the first combination that worked out how to start early stage startup support. So I got involved in that, and then I became one of the founding team members of the 11 Fund, an accelerator program. And then, I basically, suddenly became Mr. Startup in this region, something I never actually wanted to be, but gratefully used the occasion. And I think we've done a lot of great work, both with 11, where we invested in many companies, but also one of my angles was always to see how we can, spread the value, the knowledge, the instruments that we were building on the fly in Bulgaria, how we can spread that to the rest of the region. That's how Nina and I know each other, obviously, and it's been a very grateful almost a decade. And well, who could have known? Now we have completely new challenges that will be, I'm sure, as exciting and 2 years down the line as wonderful and as grateful as the previous ones were.
For sure. And now that you mentioned 10 years, I just like in the back of my mind, I think it's almost like 6 years that I've known you. Me and Max met at
Something like that.
yeah, the Startup Weekend Skopje, I think in 2014. That was for me, it was
Right.
the entry point for Startup Weekend. Maybe I can introduce myself as well briefly.
Please.
So I'm Nina Nikolić from Skopje, of course, and working here for almost 6 years in developing and strengthening the startup and innovation ecosystem in the country. I'm part of the Swiss Entrepreneurship Program team. We operate in 7 countries globally by bringing value like international experts that are working with our partner organizations and startups. And I'm also part of the co-founding team of the Association Startup Macedonia. We're doing cool stuff, and we're always thinking of how we can support entrepreneurs, and especially we know that especially startups, they operate in a crisis mode kind of always, more or less. But this is very how to put it gently, that it's not interesting period that we live with, but it's super unexpected and super surreal, at least to me, even after a month and something. Just to dive deep into the business as unusual topic, I would definitely like to start by looking at the current situation on a global scale. Like, what do you think is currently going on, and what do you think will be the aftermath for businesses?
Right. I mean, what's going on is very simple. It's an unprecedented crisis, Nina, right? Like, we have not ever lived through anything like that. I mean, anyone who is not much, our age or younger, or even a little bit older, nobody has ever experienced anything like this. Of course, in the Balkans, we have, our history with wars and breakups of countries and all that stuff, but even that is different. Thankfully, what we're living through right now is much less dramatic. I should say, hopefully much less dramatic, because unfortunately, we're not through the health crisis yet. So if things continue as they're going on right now, we will probably come out pretty well in terms of victims. So that's a very good thing. We're very lucky here in the Balkans that it's not taking, the dramatic proportions that we see in New York and Italy and Spain and in China and some places, in Moscow and Russia. So that's a very, very good thing. In terms of the economic, outflow, we've never had anything like this, right? So right now, if you're looking at the projections, Western European countries are expecting a contraction of the economy with 10% this year. Like, this never happened after the Second World War. I think that in Eastern Europe, it will be worse. Like, we'll probably lose, some of our countries will lose perhaps 50% of our economy overnight. That, of course, with some countries did happen after communism. So it's, again, we're probably slightly better positioned for this, but overall, it's an unprecedented thing. The good thing is, well, there are actually so many good things, because I don't even know where to start. It is obviously and unmistakably a cleanup of the system as it was, right? So we are basically, what we're going to see right now is that a lot of the processes that didn't happen because things were going well, this is what happens in every crisis, suddenly will accelerate. The sectors that are hit really, really hard is everything related to travel, to, the HoReCa, as it's known. So the hotels, restaurants, cafes. That will be one of the most difficult things for our economies and our societies, right? Here in the Balkans, it's true for Macedonia. It's very true for Bulgaria. It's, I think, true for pretty much every country in this part of Europe. Our economies massively depend on tourism, on the leisure sector, the restaurants, shops, and all these things. It will be up to our governments to come with ways to support this. Individually, we of course can do and should be doing as much as we can, but it's definitely very hard. It's very hard. It's different in Western Europe, where there are a lot of large corporations that governments can actually support relatively easily by simply injecting cash or guaranteeing bank loans. Here it will be hard, and it will be up to all of us to support people. But I do think, kind of on a brighter note, I do think that as this year draws to close, we'll hopefully start getting out of this. And if there's one thing to keep in mind, that the bigger a crisis is, the bigger the rebound is afterwards, right? So this crisis is so massive that it will probably take, it sounds frightening, but it will probably take a few years to get out of it. But as we get out of it, we will have a growth spurt that we've never seen before. So that's also something that's coming. So if we don't lose hope and hang on and continue doing what we should be doing, we'll witness some absolutely excellent times a few years down the line.
That's a really positive outlook on the current situation. I mean, realistically, at this point, everybody's talking about the pandemic. There are some governments, let's say, that are talking about introducing economic measures and how we can, quote unquote, get back to normal. And I think, in my opinion, is the previous normal got us into this position. So we definitely need to change our ways and in thinking of how we operate and how we do business, so we can create a new normal. But you mentioned the crisis back, like the last economic crisis. So we are now facing a pandemic, but it will be followed with an economic crisis. You know, you mentioned the one that was happening in 2008. What, in your experience, like, what do we know from that crisis? Like, what do you know? What are the challenges and what are the learnings out of that crisis?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Nina. It's I think a very important topic to discuss. Look, what happened in 2009, right? Because the crisis started in 2008, end of August, September 2008 is when the banks started collapsing in the U.S. And I remember very well. I actually just started a new corporate job at that time. Our startup was kind of, our startup was still very much in its early infancy phases. We maybe had like 20 clients. We weren't serious about it. I just found a new job that would actually allow me to, make money on the side and still dedicate some time on the startup idea. And I remember very well how for the pretty much the last several months of 2008, everyone in the Netherlands, that's where I was at the time, was like, this is not gonna come here. Like, America has some kind of bank problems or something. Like, this is never gonna come here. And it was right around Christmas when suddenly all the corporates and all the banks in Holland started going like, oh shit, this is getting real. Like, we're actually, we're exposed to this. We'll have to let people go and all that. What I remember very well, having a startup, was that, and also kind of still working at a corporate job, is that all of a sudden people became much more open to, well, basically to innovation, right? So for instance, if you were trying to sell a startup solution, today we can call it a SaaS. Back then nobody even talked about SaaS. It was business to business versus business to consumer. But if you're selling something business to business, in a situation where everything is normal, the larger companies that are larger than you automatically have less interest in what you have to offer because things are going okay. You're selling them some kind of advantage. You can do something faster, a little cheaper, a little easier. Life is fine. We're doing the way things we're doing. It's super interesting to look at what you're doing, but maybe next year, maybe in 2 years from now. What you always see in a situation of crisis is that kind of, a very long attention span, or the other way around, very kind of long, patience to innovate is drastically shortened, right? So I think that the startup founders among us, and hopefully there are many of us on this call, you will simply notice that it will be much easier to get the first attention of clients, of people, when you're coming with an innovative solution, right? These are the times when these things happen. That's kind of on a very specific, personal kind of daily level. What I think will happen, and this is in a way already happening, we're starting to see the first waves of it, is that I'm pretty sure that this crisis, which, you said, Nina, that it's going to come after the health crisis, but it's already starting, right? Like, people are losing their jobs, there are restaurants closing everywhere. A lot of people are, sitting home with less work or no work at all. This crisis is right here. What we will see in terms of innovation and startups is we'll see much more opportunities for early stage startups. I mean, you can just look at it right now. Look at all these hackathons happening, right? Like this, nobody could have imagined something like this a month ago, 2 months ago. It's happening, right? There are people coming together. They're, formulating ideas. Right now, it's all crisis response and all that. But the fact is that we have thousands, probably tens or hundreds of thousands of people around the world actually coming together to basically build a startup. And of course, as it always goes, a lot of these ideas, a lot of these projects will not happen, but these people will continue and will do other things, right? So that is a movement that's already happening. And you can see, by the signals we're getting from the larger institutional investors in Europe, and this is the European Union, the EBRD, the EU institutions like the European Investment Fund, they're all preparing to dedicate more resources, more funds towards startups as a result of this crisis, right? So what I'm pretty sure what we'll see, in the next year, 2 years, is that there'll be massive renaissance of startup opportunities. There will be many more accelerated programs once again, as just like it happened 10 years ago. So those are the things that that we can all look forward to. I think before I kind of finish on this thing and let you ask something else, I think that the really very important thing for each and every one of us is to basically not give up hope, right? I'm seeing this right now. This is kind of hard for me to say, but I'm seeing, I'm noticing here in Sofia, obviously everybody's worried, everybody is sad, pretty much like everywhere. I see a lot of friends that have small businesses that are super affected by this. Obviously, restaurants, cafes, bars, small shops. And it's very clearly that you can see, and this, if anyone is listening who feels that I'm talking about them, I have to apologize, but I can see very clearly that there is, you can kind of divide everyone in two categories. There are people that are giving up, sometimes for really good reasons. Sometimes they have a health problem. Sometimes they were already running out of money before they started, right? Like, you can never judge people without knowing the whole story, but very clearly you can see people that immediately give up. And there are those people that are kind of, doing everything they can to survive, to move forward, to kind of, live another day. And I think that divide right now is going to be very, very crucial. And if every one of us basically does everything in their power, what they can to pull through, in very good opportunities, very interesting opportunities await us at the other side of this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree, because it's also mindset. I mean, it's many different circumstances, but it's also mindset that will definitely get us through in the following period. But since you mentioned, and I just want to follow up on the previous question, because we were discussing the crisis and the learnings from the previous economic crisis, and if we all remember, the sectors that were, let's say, the most innovative in that period is mostly everything turned into the sharing economy. So let's think about that 2009, 2010, we got to have Airbnb and Uber and companies like that. So there was a disruption in some industries. What do you think, which sectors will not become winners, but let's say will overcome this crisis, and then they will make a turnaround and disruptive innovation in their sectors?
Yeah, I mean, Nina, it's very hard to predict right now. My guess is as good as everyone's, but I think, based on the deal flow that I'm seeing, based on kind of the movements that I'm seeing with friends of mine that are in tech and startups, I think there are a couple of things we can say, right? I think that fintech for sure will become bigger, and I think fintech as a whole, it's a very big sector, but I think fintech is definitely one of the sectors that's going to win big. The reason is that we'll have much more centralization of all databases. A lot of more processes will become automatic as a result of this. Everything basically that has to do with big data, and especially with the movement of money, will become much more, will probably expedite right now. I don't know if blockchain is going to be part of that. That is still kind of out there. As much as there have been a couple of very interesting blockchain related projects, there's also been a lot of bullshit in that sector. But most probably everything related to innovating the way money goes around will probably accelerate. One other factor, obviously, is remote. Everything that has to do with the remote presence, remote work. I don't want to, disappoint anyone, but I think that, as optimistic as I am on how our economy will rebound and will only become bigger and better a few years from now, I do think that the fluency of travel, as one of my friends recently said it very well, is gone for a while, right? Like the ability, I mean, personally, I'll tell you this, I'm thinking about where am I gonna travel this year? And my personal outlook is that, hopefully by summer, maybe midsummer, we'll be fortunate enough that we can travel around our countries relatively freely, hopefully, nobody knows. And my personal hope is that within Europe, whereas more specifically within the European Union, we can travel more or less freely, obviously with some restrictions, towards the end of the year, right? So hopefully this year I can go back to Holland. Maybe I can visit London. I don't know, maybe, who knows? But anything beyond that is probably not going to happen this year. I think that, in that reality, everything that allows us to do things remotely, like we're basically having this conversation over Zoom right now, my personal thought is that probably a year from now, we'll be still doing a lot of these things. There will be some more physical interactions for sure. People will probably be back in the offices partially. People will hopefully be able to move around their cities or their countries more freely than they do now. but technologies like this will be a very big part of our lives. And I think we'll be looking back to this conversation going like, I remember we used to use Zoom for calls, like how incredibly antiquated, how incredibly primitive, right? There will be many more new tools to actually, collaborate online, to kind of, draw or, do other things than just, being, this kind of talking head kind of interface. So that's one of the, like, remote access, remote work will become a part of our daily lives. It will also become part of the culture. So one of the things that I am personally very much looking forward to is the ability to actually, to once all of this is over and once things are totally back to normal, years from now, that I can still go somewhere for a month and go like, yeah, no, I'll take this meeting online, and nobody will be like, oh, that's weird. Like, why are you not in the office? Like, no, I'm not. Like, man, it's post-corona. Like, you can work from anywhere, right? So those are the things that I think are very big. And then thirdly, I'll just mention this, is I think that this is still very early to make predictions on, but I think that if we look at the way our societies and our governments are starting to combat the crisis, and the way they're integrating data, and the way they're creating data platforms that will massively track what's going on, how we're moving, how we're accessing different services and everything. I think that these, you can call it big data, but everything related to large platforms will probably become more regulated, more complicated, but at the same time, there'll probably be much more access to for startups, right? So I think that this world where we have a couple of very big American companies that are not really responsible to anyone, controlling all of the data, and this is something that very clearly happened over the last 5 years, right? I think that is going to go. I think that is going to go, and we'll still have, these very large platforms, but they'll probably be much more regulated by governments. And we'll, as startups, as innovators, will have much more access to structured public data than we do have today, which is going to be a great opportunity for startups.
You mentioned the sector, let's say the fintech sector, that will be the one that you're kind of predicting that most of the innovation will happen in this sector. But knowing let's say the Balkan startup ecosystem, and knowing how things are done here, that sometimes we're slow in terms of innovation, not in terms of quality of startups, of course, but in terms of innovation. What do you think, and working, of course, with startups, what do you think that now in this period will be the biggest struggles for startups, and how startups from this region can overcome these issues?
Right. I mean, if we look at the Balkans, Nina, I think that the hard thing that everybody has to get used to is that access to each other and to abroad will be quite limited for the next year, probably, maybe more, right? As I already mentioned, I think that within, the countries that are in the European Union will probably pretty quickly come to some kind of system that will allow us to travel between the EU countries, right? And we still don't know how this is going to look like. Maybe this is going to be some kind of extra thing in your passport or something, or some kind of app that will tell you whether you were tested for antibodies or what's the last time you had a corona test or something. Like, until there is a vaccine, there's definitely going to be restrictions on travel, right? And I think, again, that within the EU, they will probably work out some kind of thing. Maybe they will extend it as far as possible to the countries that are, in accession to the EU, like North Macedonia, like Albania, and other friends and neighbors of ours. But we don't know yet. Nobody knows. But for sure, you can count on, kind of the fluency, the ease of movement that we had. I could just get into my car, and 2 hours later or 3 hours later, I could be sitting with you in a kafana in Skopje, right? Like, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Like, and then when it happens, it will be difficult, that we won't just be able to go just like that. We'll need some kind of documents or something, permits. I don't know, right? So this is one thing that we need to be very clear about in the Balkans, right? Unlike in, let's say, Amsterdam or London or Silicon Valley or wherever else, at the moment the local restrictions will get lifted, people can actually start doing things with each other. Our communities are very, very small, and that's the reason we were, you and I and many of our friends, we were building this Balkan startup community. We were breaking away those borders that were there because of the history that we have. Is that we needed to have a big regional kind of, community going on, right? It will be a very big struggle to keep that going, right? Because travel will be very difficult. So also for the startups, getting access to each other, getting access to funding, getting access to markets will be much more of a thing, right? So I think that, again, there will be a divide, just like, the one that I was telling you about in the local market here, where you see cafes that immediately go out of business and those that continue struggling and will probably survive. The same will be true for startups in our region. I think that anyone who thought it was hard and who didn't make a lot of progress will probably have a harder time in the next year, at least, and probably longer. Everybody, however, who kind of is seizing on the opportunity and is being more proactive, I think more opportunities will be down the line, but you'll have to basically be much more proactive, right? Just to give you a small example, you, Nina, you've been organizing so many events in Skopje and all across, the region. Like right now, most likely, even if you get to do events again, it will be much harder for me or for anyone else from outside Macedonia to come, right?
That's why we moved to webinars and online at this point.
There you go.
Yeah,
right?
so we keep the momentum, of course.
So in a way, we can say that the 68 people that are in this call right now are already on the winning side. But as a whole, I think people will have to be much more proactive into seizing opportunities. On the one hand, it will be much easier to get in touch with potential clients, potential investors online. On the other hand, you will really have to do it yourself because they won't come to you. Like it will be harder, right? And I say this, knowing very well that many of the projects that we're involved in, like Swiss EP, many of the other projects that are working in the region, funds like the one that I'm setting up right now, we will be constantly active in helping everyone connect and bring opportunities to each other. But it will be there will be more friction between what you're doing locally and where you want to be, right? So that's one thing that everybody has to get ready for. And again, just like I mentioned, it's all about surviving this really hard period. After that, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, after hopefully the vaccine is here, we can.
Yeah,
but until then,
it's gonna be like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, but until then, let's talk about the VC world and all the VCs that are now looking for potential deals, but also on the other hand, the startups that were maybe in the middle of raising money. You now running a newly established VC fund based in Bulgaria. Share your experiences. How is this past month been going on for you guys over there?
Oh, well, a lot of very different experiences, Nina. I think that, well, just to answer the last question for us, we've been working as usual. We've actually expedited some of the formalities that we still had to close. So I think hopefully we'll do a public launch of our fund very soon. We already are structuring some of the first investments. We're planning out, accelerator programs, which will look differently now. And hopefully we can do something virtually as well. That's something that I'm working on right now. So as soon as possible, I will, publicly communicate it. So that's going very well. I think that when it comes to VC funds in general, there are a couple of things that are moving very, very quickly and changing very quickly. I think that as a whole, right now, a lot of funds are basically taking a pause until they understand what is the new reality, right? This has been kind of the case over the last month. I know a lot of founders that have been complaining about, they don't hear back from investors. They don't, they had a good conversation going and suddenly people dropped the ball. It's absolutely true because everybody's trying to figure out what is the new normal, right? Like even 2 weeks ago, there were still many friends in my, my VC circles that were saying like, oh, well, we'll give it a month or two, we'll go back to normal. Now people know that no, nothing's going to go back to normal in a month or two. So let's see, let's wait and see until we hit the peak of the crisis, and then we can continue kind of, we can plan new marketing activities, we can see how much is left in the fund, et cetera, et cetera. So right now, I would say is that you kind of have to give VCs a break. I mean, if you're fundraising, definitely keep the pressure on, right? I personally see a huge surge in the conversations that I've been having with founders. Everybody is like coming back all the time, like, are you guys still doing it? Are you going to be launching? Are you going to be doing the deals, right? So I'm trying to answer everyone I can. I don't always manage to. So if you're fundraising, keep the pressure on, but keep in mind that a lot of funds are basically taking a pause to understand what the new reality is. Now, when we look beyond that, I think you can divide funds in two parts. I think that everyone who just raised or recently raised a new fund or recently raised additional money for their fund, the money is there and it's going to have to be invested. And in most cases, not all, but I should say probably in different cases, right? So in some cases, when the money is backed by governments, in most of the cases, the governments are actually putting pressure on funds to be more proactive with investing, because everybody understands that VC funds, especially early stage ones, are some of the best instruments to support jobs, support innovation, to basically keep things going when it comes to, because, compared to many other investment modes or styles, early stage venture capital actually generates a lot of jobs per euro, per dollar, whatever way you count it. So everybody gets that. So if you have recently created funds, they will actually be operating and probably even getting more and more deals that they were expecting to do. So that's a good thing. Now, obviously, those people that were still fundraising a fund, or that were planning to close maybe in summer, maybe end of the year, very often they will be delayed, or maybe they won't be able to close, right? And this all has to do with private investors, right? I think that one of the most difficult things that we're facing right now as an industry is that private capital, especially small check private capital, so angel investments or small tickets into VC funds from individuals, a lot of that is going to be put on hold in the next, basically from now onwards till there is some kind of, positive curve coming out of the crisis. So basically anyone who was investing angel checks in startups, anyone who was investing, small checks into local VC funds, and there are a lot of people like that in every country. Like a lot of those people, even if they have money, even if their own incomes aren't impacted, they're like, okay, let's wait and see. I need a cushion to survive this period, right? So I think that is going to be one sector that is going to be very, very, very impacted by this. So if
How long do you think that they're thinking about this period where they're trying to figure out the new normal? How long, in months or years will be? I don't. Yeah.
Positive scenario is until the end of the summer, I think. But in reality, Nina, I think it's this year, all of it, and then we'll see. But I think that this year, honestly, things are not going to get much better. Like hopefully they're not going to get any worse than they are now. But in terms of the unpredictability and kind of the inability to do things like we used to do them until beginning of March, I don't think any of that will be back until the end of the year. And I think that a lot of the people that were planning to invest, let's say, a couple of deals, 10, 20, 30, 50K, whatever, per deal, until the end of the year, they won't be making those deals. Of course, there will always be exceptions to the rule. So hopefully some people that can afford it will be like, no, right now I actually need to go and start up and support startups more. I'm pretty sure we'll see some of our angel friends do this, but overall, I think that a lot of the small check private capital is going to be much harder to come by this year.
Before we jump on to the final couple of questions, I would like to remind everybody that has joined us for this webinar to feel free to type in some questions in the chat option. Whether you have questions for Max or for me, we will be happy to answer them to you. But also we will leave by the end of this discussion, we will, by raising hand also as an option, you can join us with a video call. I mean, during the Zoom webinar, you can join us for a question if you like to, if you feel more comfortable in asking it that way. But Max, before we close the discussion, I know we dived into so many different segments, but in the end, it's definitely a very uncertain times, and it's not very easy to predict how this will play out. But in terms of supporting, because for me personally now it's the mission of how we can support more and more founders for them to stay in business, and especially startups that are definitely going to and are struggling at this point. In your opinion, what do you think that, for example, the accelerators, incubators, and those that are now part of any kind of program can do for the founders and their teams? And on the other hand, also, if you have some suggestions that the governments can actually take as measures, as economic measures to support the entrepreneurs who are basically, let's say, the foundation of the economic system in the country.
Yeah. I mean, look, in terms of programs, so accelerators, other investment programs, actually many of them are switching to online. And I think that that's also one of the things that's the new normal, that we'll see many more investment programs actually happening remotely. I was myself, I was participating in the so-called online demo day that 500 startups had, which they originally planned to be offline. This was about a little less than a month ago, somewhere end of March. But then, of course, this situation happened, so they moved it online. And I don't know if they were planning to do that before, or they just came up with it like shortly before the event. But they basically announced that most of their programs will be kind of like semi-online from now on, right? Even when things go back to normal, they'll still do some things offline when they can, but they actually will be accepting startups in batches or in groups without batches on a rolling basis to follow most of the program online, right? And that was quite an announcement. There's probably no going back. I know that many other accelerator programs that are running right now, like for instance, Startup White Guys, they've completely moved their entire batch online, and they're actually doing like they're learning on the fly. They have like daily sessions. They match mentors in Zoom environments or in other online tools. I think that, a lot of that is going on. Definitely, if with my fund, if we're launching and we're supposed to be, one of our big plans is to do accelerator programs. If we would love to do stuff offline because we're very good at having fun and doing big events. But if we can't do it, I'm very much looking forward to doing online accelerator programs myself. And hopefully I can invite as many people as possible from North Macedonia to join. Having said that, this is going to be probably the new normal, and probably it's going to be one of those things that doesn't really go away after we can meet in person. When it comes to governments, what should governments do? I think that, I've already said this. I think that, supporting the startup ecosystem is going to be one of the big focus areas of our governments, right? We're seeing this already with the EU. So the European Commission is being very, very active together with the European Investment Fund and all the other programs that they're supporting in kind of pushing for more structured support as the crisis unravels, because basically what you have to, you have the situation where you have millions of newly unemployed people, and the easiest way you have to put them back to work is to give relatively small money. It's actually much cheaper to bail out, to give money to a startup of a few people than it is to bail out a corporation per employee that works there, right? So, I think that we'll see for sure the big European governments and the European Union governments spending much more money and effort, and we'll probably see many more programs for startups to participate in. We have always, you guys know this very well. Here in Bulgaria, we've always had this idea that, everything that happens here should be open and available to everyone in the Balkans. So as we launch our programs with my fund and hopefully all the new other initiatives that are happening in Bulgaria, as far as I'm concerned, everybody from Skopje or anywhere in Macedonia is welcome, right? So if we have programs, do apply. We might ask you to register an entity in Bulgaria in some cases. Hopefully some cases we don't have to do that. Maybe some of you guys will get a Bulgarian employment contract or something, but if we can invest, especially if it's a program, if it's an accelerator program, everybody is super welcome, and we'll share the wealth and the opportunities as much as we can with everyone.
Perfect. And maybe just to wrap up this conversation, then we can go to the Q&A session, just to be mindful of the time. What are you mostly looking forward to after this period, let's say after this crisis? What are you mostly looking forward to, and what are also your friends, entrepreneurs, thinking about doing after this crisis?
Right. I mean, so look, I think that most people answer this question with, I want to travel or I want to go to restaurants. To be honest, I really be honest with you, Nina, here, I haven't reached that point yet. Like a lot of friends ask me, like, Max, you must be so sad. You were traveling so much. Now you can't travel anymore. Like, look, I'm probably very fortunate, but I've been traveling literally more than I can remember. Like, ever since I was a little baby, my parents were taking me around. So I've literally been traveling nonstop my entire life. And even if this lasts for like 2 years, I know that the rest of my life I'll be still traveling, right? So I don't really miss it. It's really nice to be at home with my partner, Ellie, and, we can sleep more than we would have, and we can, have fun with each other and watch movies. So I'm not really missing that. But of course, this will take a while, and when it's over, of course, traveling will be very nice. One of the things that I'm personally really looking forward to, and I'll be very honest here, I'm looking forward to remote being the new normal, right? Like, one of the things that I've already shared this here, but I hope that we get to a situation after all this is over, after everybody is vaccinated, after our economies are growing back up again. I hope we get to a point where, if you are going to be, whatever you do, whatever job you have, unless you're, driving a bus or flying a plane or, operating a person in a hospital, if you want to work remotely for a month or something, that's what you do. And, I'm kind of personally really looking forward to that. There are so many parts of this world that I would like to spend, more time in. Many of the countries where I lived and grew up as a kid, I would love to go just for a month or 2 or 3 months and just work from there. And up until now, this was really hard because you're still kind of expected to be in one place, but I'm looking forward to that being gone. So that's my kind of dream box for the post-corona world.
So you're looking forward to more and more people working remotely.
I think that would be a very good thing. We have a couple of questions. I think we have 2 questions so far from what I can see.
Yeah. Do you want to, Anya, do you want to jump in on the questions, or you want to go for it, Max?
I could just read them and then we can answer them.
Sure. Go for it.
So we have Dragana asking, she says, you talk about sectors that you expect would grow after the pandemic. Do you see any sectors, subsectors disappearing? That's a really good question. Dragana, so thank you for asking that. I think, one of the conversations I've had with some of my friends is what is going to happen to co-working spaces. Like, we actually don't know, but I personally have this feeling that, just like with restaurants, like a lot of them will fail and some of them will survive, right? Generally, if you purely look at the numbers of the whole co-working business, it is very likely that people that were working in a co-working space and were paying quite a lot of money, because the whole logic of co-working spaces is that you don't have a fixed contract. It's very flexible, but you kind of pay a lot per day or per month or for whatever you measure a week, right? And a lot of those people now are like working from home and doing kind of the same thing, and they probably will not go back to using it as much as they used to. At least that's my logic. That's how I see it. So I think that we definitely had a co-working boom everywhere in the world in the last couple of years. But here in Sofia, we have like 60 or 70 co-working spaces until Corona started, right? And many of them are still there, but they're just closed. I think that business will probably get normalized. Like, I'm pretty sure that some of the bigger, better concepts will stay, but I think that spaces that just are hipster hangouts and that don't really offer a lot of value and that don't really have like a community or like very clear value proposition for their members, a lot of those spaces will basically go, right? People will be spending less money on things they don't really need, and a lot of people will be used at working not from, like, a lot of people transition from an office to a shared space. A lot of those people are now working either at home or in small groups somewhere privately. That will probably clean up the co-working space market, I think.
Because the co-working spaces are, when we look at the co-working spaces, they are definitely a vital part in the development of any ecosystem. I think mostly because of the, let's say, not just the co-working as it is, but mostly about the community building around it and the events. So maybe some of them will stick around if they keep on providing events once we start getting back to gathering with a large group of people.
Yeah, no, for sure they'll have to win back people, right? Like that would be the hard part of it.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's one. Then we have someone, Naumche, asking which mentoring services would be best for startup companies after the end of the crisis situation. I mean, it's hard to say. It's kind of it's a very theoretical question. We really don't know when this is going to end and how the world is going to look like, right? So it's very hard today to imagine how things will be like once all of this is over. Then turn on the lights. It's getting dark here. But at the same time, the feeling that I have is that this kind of formats will be much more available also on a one-on-one basis, right? So I think that, before this whole thing started, we always would say like, well, you have to kind of get on a plane and go places. Like, this is like the famous gospel that Silicon Valley was always selling. Like, if you come here, it's very, very easy to get in touch with people, right? It's hard to continue, the contact because you kind of have to keep coming back.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to go there and to meet people, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's probably going to change, right? Because I think that, I personally, I would never, ever, ever do webinars before this thing started. I mean, the amount of times that I was asked to do a remote talk, and I would always laugh at people. Like, I don't talk to my computer. Like, if you want to invite me to your country, I'll come. But I'm not gonna do like a Skype mentoring session. I did it like once, and it was like a complete disaster, and I just never want to do it again. I mean, now we live in this world where this is, kind of the new normal. So I think that as we get out of this, and again, we'll be getting out of this very slowly and very gradually, right? It will be on a country by country basis. Once you can travel within your city, doesn't mean you can travel outside your city. Once you can travel outside your city, doesn't mean you can travel outside your country. Then when you can't travel to certain countries, you can't travel to other countries. Like, this is gonna last for like 2 years, guys. Like, this is not gonna go away fast. So until we get there, this is gonna be like 2 years, we will actually be having a lot of these online conversations. So I think it will be much more normal, first of all, to reach out to people that you want to talk to and ask them for a quick online talk. And I also think we'll be seeing many more services and platforms where this will be happening in an organized way. Let's see. I like, for instance, tomorrow I'm speaking at an online conference, and at first I thought that it was also something like this, like a Zoom, basically. But then, they invited me to their environment, and it's like a whole like a conference tool. Like you can actually, like, people can write to you, but you can also like schedule like within that website. You can actually schedule like one-on-one chats, like between sessions and stuff. Like they're really trying to, everybody's learning, everybody's trying to model this kind of online interaction. So I think that more of these things will be happening. And again, I think a lot of these innovations will stay after we go back to flying around and doing whatever we want. So
maybe I can also add just a little bit on that one, because currently with Startup Macedonia, we're working on, we are already developing the platform, which is going to be digitalizing the whole ecosystem and all the actors that are active. And one key component of it is that very soon there will be like a separate mentoring platform within the mentoring platform, which will be dedicated for startups, but also for local and international experts and people who are successful with their businesses that are, let's say, diaspora kind of groups. So stay tuned and follow Startup Macedonia, and this will be available, I think, by the end of this year for sure. And we have another question, Max. What is your opinion on brick and mortar businesses' marketing efforts now and post the crisis? Should they cut or double down on their marketing efforts?
Right. That's a really good question. That's from William. A really good question. I think there are two answers to this. So I think that everybody kind of agrees that if you have campaigns running now that were designed before this crisis, this new reality started, you should probably revise them. You should probably cut money. Like basically take away whatever budget you have for it, because whatever, like if you're doing a proper marketing campaign, like whatever assumptions you had, whatever calculation you made for it before Corona is probably not going to work out now. Or if it does, it's going to be a coincidence, and you should never bet on coincidences. So you should totally revise your marketing spend. Like if it's a question specifically about brick and mortar businesses, obviously whatever offline advertising you had probably has to go online, but you should really this is kind of the thing that everybody's talking about right now. Like, how do you reposition your business, especially if it's a brick and mortar business, towards the new reality, right? I think that what everyone agrees on right now is that you should really kind of get back to your clients and talk to them as much as you possibly can online, right? If your client base is less than 100 people, just literally give everyone a phone call and don't even offer them anything. Just listen to them, right? Because now everybody is worried. They can't, like most of the people, like I don't know how many people here have kids in the house. I personally don't have kids, but like everybody who is sitting at home, sorry, with their children, running around, trying to homeschool their kids, trying to do their work, worrying about maybe losing their job, worrying about how to do their groceries, worrying about their parents not abiding by the rules and still going to the pharmacies, like all of these things that are happening to all of us right now. People are just plainly very worried, right? So as a business, one of the best things you can do, especially if you have a limited amount of customers, let's say up to 100, is just literally pick up the phone and just call these people and ask them how they're doing. Ask them how they're coping, ask them if you can do anything for them. Like, just have a human conversation. I think that I've seen I've seen some businesses do this, and this is like this is how you win hearts and minds. And then whenever these people are going to be going back to spending money, they will always remember you as someone who gave them that human touch of attention. Like, you were there in times when things were rough. Even if they couldn't buy from you, don't even try to sell them anything, right? So that's a very human, empathetic thing to do. That's probably all the marketing you really need to do right now. Of course, if you have many more clients, if you have a tool that is used by thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, try to have that conversation in an online way. I would say be very careful with sending these mass emails. I think that a lot of the people right now are kind of sick and tired of all these emails they're getting from the CEO of the mass corporation, because I've had like a number of them. I was like literally dumbstruck when I got like a third email, like super long, from the CEO of Starbucks, like, yes, I have a Starbucks app and I pay through that app when I go to countries that have Starbucks cafes in them. But like why is that guy, CEO of some massive corporation, sending like the third email in 3 weeks, telling me how much he cares about me and the fact that I cannot buy his coffee right now? Like screw you, seriously. Like, I don't care about it. like and of course trying to show how much they take care of their clients and whatnot. Like, spare me that bullshit. Like, I don't care. Like, I would be much more happy to read some news article about how Starbucks is taking care of their staff rather than get these emails in my inbox saying that the CEO of Starbucks cares about me and like 30 million other people that are his clients, right? So like those things, try to make it personal, right? I think that's kind of the marketing. That's kind of the outreach of the marketing you want to do right now. So cut on all the unnecessary stuff and try to have like very human approaches. And of course, if you have some kind of switch in your business model, like for instance, if you started doing things online that you weren't doing online, or if you started delivering things that were before that you had to pick up, try to communicate that. But keep in mind that a lot of that you're competing with other people, and you have to really position it in a way that makes sense for you. Nina, do you want to?
Okay, let's see if anybody wants to join. Anybody wants to join for a question, raise your hand. And
we have someone asking here about Swiss investor base. That's something I know nothing about. And you probably know a little more than I do, Nina, but I'm not sure you do.
Where I cannot see the.
No, sorry, that was a private question to me. I have someone asking me how to tap into the Swiss investor base for capital. Man, I have no idea. To be honest with you, I don't work with Swiss investors myself.
We do, but whoever sent you that question, they can reach out to me and see what I can do about it.
Very good. Now you know.
Yeah, Anya, maybe do you have any questions for Max before we wrap up the session?
Well, no, guys, I just want to thank you. It was a great chat. So if anyone else wants to add something, they can ask now.
One last opportunity for questions.
Yeah.
If we don't have,
we have another one.
Someone is asking about video. Yes, I think there's going to be a video of this conversation published somewhere by Brainster, right?
Yeah. They will share the link tomorrow. And so I think we covered more or less what we could have covered in 45 minutes, an hour tops. It was a pleasure, Max, having an honest chat about business as unusual. I'm looking forward to give hugs to people, to be honest. Like, this is what I'm looking forward.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting, Nina. We have to see when and how that will be and how that will be back, right? So that's going to be very interesting. I mean, let's see. Social distancing is here to stay. But look, guys, the last thing I want to leave you with is this. This has been a famous, mindset, and I think it's Richard Branson who said it, but maybe someone else did, because on the internet they say all kinds of crap. How do you win? You win by surviving, right? Like, we just have to pull through this. It's not that difficult. Look, the worst thing that can happen to you right now is that you catch the stupid virus and you actually get very sick and you die, right? So for that reason, stay home. Don't go celebrating Easter with your, I don't know if Macedonia has Easter next week or last week, but
this week.
This week. So if you still have Easter this coming weekend, just don't go to your parents. Like, it's super hard. I know how it is with my parents-in-law. Like, they're like, they can't understand. They're like calling us every day, but like, why can't you come? But please come. But maybe you can come. Even though here in Bulgaria, we're not even allowed to leave the cities. There's like police everywhere. You can't even go. But they don't want to take no for an answer. Just please stay home. Please abide by all the rules, because the worst thing that can happen right now is that you make people sick or you get sick yourself. Once you stay healthy and alive, look, even if you lose your job or if the money that you were counting on doesn't come through, I've been in these situations myself, but some people will probably say, like, it's very easy for me to say because probably, I don't suffer from that problem. Like, believe me, I've been there. I know how it feels. And some of us might get into that situation right now as well, but it will pass, right? You will be able to survive. Even if you literally lose your job, you will borrow money, you will live again with your parents. Like, you will find a way to get out of this. You will get a job. But the good thing is that once all of this is over, we'll be going back to growth, to integration more with our neighboring countries, with the markets, and we just have to pull through this interesting time, and we can enjoy the things that we can do now that we couldn't have done otherwise. We can read more books, we can sleep more, we can think more about how we'll succeed in this new world, right? So that's something I want to leave everyone with, and then stay safe, be well, and I'm looking forward, Nina, to the next opportunity to chat with you in this kind of format.
Same, Max. Thanks once again for actually taking on this invitation for your first webinar, right? I think
Kind of, yeah.
it was a great experience, and I do hope that we managed to bring value to all these people that join us today, and we'll watch the session tomorrow. Thanks again to Brainstar for hosting this webinar, and looking forward to the other webinars that are in collaboration with our Swiss entrepreneurship program. We will let you know by the end of this week. We are planning additional webinars with other experts. Stay safe, stay home, as Max said, as everybody's recommending. We'll get through this, and yeah, we will support each other to make the most out of this situation. Thank you once again for this opportunity. Yeah.
See you, everyone.
See you soon.
Thank you. Have a good
Speak
evening.
soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys. Bye bye.